And then,
Mm.
like your generation, I mean, everybody gets like this, um,
Shit
their
sandwich.
own talent. Yeah, that's right. Everybody gets, oh yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem to be getting any easier out there by a long shot.
Hello, and welcome to the Ask Ezra Intimacy Coaching Podcast. Today will be a little bit different. I will interview Judith Brassard Brown, professor, fine artist of international acclaim, and perhaps most importantly, my mother. The subject of the interview will be the new book, The Path Through, a book of paintings and poetry on the subject of trauma, for which Judith and I have been working on for the past 2 years. The book was inspired by our experience with personal and intergenerational trauma. It exemplifies the stages of grief and serves as a reminder that no storm lasts forever and no burden is shouldered alone. Get your copy now as an ebook or paperback through Amazon.com. Join us for a conversation already in progress.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah.
So weird to be on the screen with you.
It's weird to be on screen. Yeah.
It's my first podcast.
It is your first podcast. May it be the first of many.
Well, since I've registered to try to sort of publicize our mutual project, I have heard from some other people, and I may be on other podcasts. We'll see.
That's my sense, is that as soon as people hear that you're interested in going on podcasts, they'll jump at the chance because, I think there's a million coaches that want to come on podcasts. So, and I'm like, I'm a coach. I want to be on your podcast. Everybody's like, so get in line. But,
So I have done like artists events, like artist talks.
Sure. Of course. I know you've been on lots of things. But let me back up.
Okay.
Welcome to the Ask Ezra podcast.
Thank you.
You are Judith Brassard Brown.
Yeah.
International artist extraordinaire.
That's how you catch it. I have shown in other parts of the world, but
and when you've got pieces in museums and you do paintings and mixed media work.
I do. Right. They've mostly been located in Boston and the New England area, although early on I showed my work in New York City. I had a gallery there.
Makes sense. And you did the paintings for The Path Through. I did.
And this has been, I think this has been a fabulous project. I mean, I was sort of, you asked me why I was so surprised at how much of how proud I am and how cool I think this is. And you said, well, didn't you think it was only, like, why'd you agree to do it if you didn't think it was going to be that? But, like with any work of art, you start out with kind of an idea and it evolves, and, there's the plan and how you adjust the plan. And this has been kind of a long-term project and has evolved in ways that I think are, really, it's been great for me. I hope it's been as satisfying and cathartic and, I don't know, positive for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the journey has been a different one.
Right.
I mean, this was my idea, right?
It was your idea.
And I had the vision, like the vision was fully formed right away. And I see the finished product and it looks just like what I thought it would look like.
I think that's a riot.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know like what was the content going to be like, but I like, I think I thought it was going to be bigger, right? I wanted to go bigger. We've got like, go ahead, hold it up. It's like 8.5 by 8.5.
It's physically bigger.
Yeah. It's pretty big, but I had this like vision of it like
Are you
taking
seeing
up
this backwards.
No, I'm seeing it right away, right ways. Yeah, it's mirrored.
That's funny because I have the mirror on my end.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's backwards in the
Yeah, but originally I wanted it to be like 11 inches square, and that's just too much book.
It's way too.
It's not a kid's book. It doesn't. I just wanted the paintings to be big enough that you could like really get them.
Well, these days, well, first of all, it has a URL on, what is it? A code on the back. So if you wanted to go right to my website or whatever.
You can get higher resolution images or something, right?
I think anytime that you see images like on the computer or in print, it's a very different experience than seeing them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're looking at them online or in print, small paintings sort of have the same presence or larger than the bigger paintings, right? So that you like scale everything. It's sort of it's a different kind of way of seeing work, and you're not sensitive to like the material or to the size or to, like the sort of like the very real issues that impact you when you see work in person.
Yeah. I remember I was really struck by The Kiss. We saw Gustav Klimt. Was that right? Yeah. So he did The Kiss, and it's like 6 feet tall, and it's gilded, and it's like it has gems like painted in, and like you don't get any of that on the page. And that was my favorite painting when it was flat and two-dimensional. And then I go and see it in person, and it's like, wow.
No, and the audience should know, like who's ever listening to know, like as a child, you were dragged around to museums and biennales in Venezia. I mean, you spent a lot of time in museums and galleries and being around art people and being in people's studios. And so that's part of the reason why you are as
weird as I am.
A human being. Right?
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. And I think there was always a joke I used to say, like when I would like walk into this like installation piece, and it would be this like really goofy thing, and I would go, I could have been an artist, because like installation art gets like so weird. Like there was one that was just crushed cars stacked, and there was another one that was like nude Polaroids in pantyhose hanging from the ceiling. There was another one that was like an empty room, and there just was birds in this like on the ceiling, and there's bird shit on the floor.
Right, that was the Venice Biennale. That was and people would walk in and they wouldn't even know why they were there. Like there's nothing in the room, and it would take people a while to sort of figure out what was going on. Yeah,
and I would just look to you and go, I'm going to be an artist. In the most bizarre, impractical incarnation of one. Yeah, just to torture you, I think. But
it's a million stories, right?
Right. Yeah. So tell me, what is the book about?
Well, we started having conversations because you're in this life coaching, and you're working on all different ways that you can like process, repair trauma. And through the years, I realized more and more that really is the motivating force of my work, that it creates space, right? To be able to sort of go into this different kind of state, to give yourself room to bring whatever your stories are to the images that are being made, that are either sort of like, you connect to the sort of like healing aspects or the meditative or the potential, right? Like it's kind of like a moment. And I've always thought about making paintings. It's like being in a foreign country. There's what you see, but then there's what you sense below the surface, right? Like, all kinds of sensations, like when you look at something, even if you've done the research to understand what it's all about, you're doing it from your point of view, your vantage point, the way that you process things. And it's funny, years ago, there's the guy who was known as the father of modern photography, this guy, Henry Cartier-Bresson. And I love his photos, but and he drew every day. But he would say, photography is immediate action, and painting's an active meditation. And I think it's an active meditation whether you're making it or you're viewing it. So I think it's, it's that meditative capacity, right, that makes people go and look at paintings, right? That you go and you enter these other worlds, these other spaces, and it gives you room to feel things kind of in a different way, or to connect. So the fact that you were doing that, and I was sort of trying to articulate that, because it's much easier for me to do the painting than it is to put anything into words. And I'm going to be preparing for this show. It just seemed like a really interesting opportunity.
I think there was a kind of synchronicity. Yeah. Like I felt stuck until like 2015, right? And then you had sort of taken on dealing with stuff in a way. I don't know quite how to explain it. Say it again.
Well, yeah, I went back into therapy. Were not the kinds of therapies available when I originally went to therapy, that helped you process trauma, right? Like sort of like neurologically.
Yeah.
It's not like when I went back into therapy, I learned new things, but I learned how to process and handle, and so it changed.
Yeah.
How
so in 2015, I saw you change how you relate to the world. Like I saw you change the amount of baggage that you had. And I had baggage, and I was like, oh, like you can do that. You can be different. And so, I think a lot of the trauma is like intergenerational trauma is like mold making, right? Like you make a negative image and you create this like relief. And so like I have trauma, and it looks like your trauma, but it's different. It's not that I have your trauma, but it's that the architecture, the geography of your trauma is indicative of mine. And then when I saw you dealing with it, I was like, oh, okay. And so I started to deal with it. And so I think it's really remarkable that we've been kind of companions in growth in ways. And, I've got to see like real marked change in my son, and how I've been able to show up in different ways, and sort of like, not to say that like, I've finished it or like I cured myself of trauma.
I don't think you ever did.
No, but the burden is less than it was. And then I see on my son that the burden is less than that was, and then after growing for a long time, I also see that my burden is less than my father's was, and is upset as I might be with him for certain things. Like he really worked hard to isolate me from that,
Right.
And so, I mean,
pass it on, but we do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you do the best you can. Right. And I think, we were sitting on a park bench, and then I realized that what I'm doing is what you've been doing with your paintings. And I was like, well, let's speak it aloud. Like, let's make it real. Let's let everyone know. And this is kind of like transmutation of taking these really hard experiences and turning them into something really valuable. They give us insight. And in this case, we can give that insight to others. And, I'm accustomed to writing like guidebooks or like, personal development kind of things. But this isn't that. This is just evidence that you can get through it. And so when you're in the depths of despair.
No, well, but that's really what's important, is that oftentimes I think people don't, I know that I felt like maybe this is the best that could be achieved, right? It wasn't like I wasn't working at it, but, and I tried hard to, it's ironic because of course I wanted to protect you, or protect, others, right, from my junk. I didn't want to play it forward. In fact, I wanted to be aware and try to like walk around the grenades. And what you learn is that, like what I was trying very hard to do is to take responsibility, right? Like for like the junk that I had to get through, even if I wasn't doing a very good job of feeling okay, right? So I could keep that not feeling okay away from you, but that didn't really work all the time. And there were ways that my hyper focus of trying to like do things the right way created a problem, right?
Well, and I like to say that everything happened exactly as it needed to happen. And all we can do is learn our lessons, right? And
that's right. All you can do. Yeah.
And
no, you go.
Well, I was just going to say it gives us an opportunity to forgive ourselves, right? Like I would love to have done better. I'm sure you would love to have done better, but there weren't the resources. There wasn't the opportunity to do any better. This is exactly as good as we could do. And that's exactly where we're at. And anything else is someone else's story. Right.
Right.
So,
but as you engage, like now that we're here, I'm here, like sometimes I still have to struggle with, this is my work to do. And it's appropriate not to like try to ask for forgiveness or comfort or, no, I just have to go do the work. And I'm also very lucky that I get to do that work in the painting, right? In my, in my studio practice, but also as a teacher, right? I can be there for students in a way that is helpful to them. And then I get to make a contribution. I get to play something forward, in ways that are satisfying, because I would have wanted somebody to be able to do that for me if they had been aware, if they'd had that capacity.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's very complicated.
Yeah, I get the feeling completely. I think that the work that I do as a coach is exactly that. It's, what are the messages that I could have really used to hear, right? And for me, it's so often you're okay. This is normal. You're going to get through this. It isn't forever, right? There are tools to help you feel comfortable or more comfortable as you deal with this, but this is your work. And if you don't deal with it, it's always going to be your work, right?
Yeah, that's right. You don't get any better, I'm actually really glad that I get to go into like being really older. Not that I feel so old now. I know that I am, but getting really older, right? To have all that baggage still there and to be so easily triggered and to feel like it's my job to fix things or to take care of things or to, right? When I can't.
Yeah, you're unburdened.
There's what I can do. And I can maybe influence a few things here and there if I'm lucky, or I can be kind or give space to things, but I can't necessarily, like the child in me, said that when I get older, I will make sure that none of those things ever happen to people I love, that I'll be like a much better grown up. I want you to like the whole
and you can't
range.
protect people. You can't eliminate those things from people's experience. And if you could, you would honestly be doing them a disservice, because that's part of growing up. That's part of life.
I guess there's just a lot that you can't do. And then, like your generation, I mean, everybody gets like this,
shit sandwich.
Their own talent. Yeah, that's right. Oh yeah. I mean, it doesn't seem to be getting any easier out there by a long shot. People just want to make it be black and white, or
it's never that's just
awful.
That's just a comforting notion. It's never black and white. It's always complex.
It's taking up an awful lot of airspace.
Okay, so
I love the book. I'm so glad you talked me into doing it. Just saying.
Well, and then I think the attitude is really funny, because at the beginning your attitude was like, sure, whatever, go ahead, use my work. And I was like, I want to do this with you. Like, what are you talking about?
Well, one of the ways that I try to manage expectations, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know how to think about some things, but not about others necessarily.
Sure. Okay, so who is the book about?
Who is the book? It's not a who. It's about, wherever you're starting from, right? It's like being on that path. We are constantly sort of having to process things or move between things. Paintings are never, I mean, one of the reasons I love painting, it's never a linear narrative. Never, ever. It's not like this happened and then happened, It's like creating dream states where all kinds of disparate elements can coexist, right? In kind of a seamless, even if it may look like the natural world, have sort of sensation of space, or, right, feel joyous or sad, or, right?
But it's not by itself a sad painting, or it's not one specific place, or it's not about, I think the nada painting is very much about nada, but it's also about more than nada.
It is way more than nada. It's like our lives. It's like, the life of progression between, being very young and moving around and finding yourself in this right place after all of this time where there's some kind of essential aspect of yourself that's coming out in this time of extremis, right? She was so many, like all of us, so many contradictions of being generous and forward thinking and crazy and triggered, and right.
No, and I think with the poems it's interesting because they often take the spirit of a letter, right? They often, like, I might be thinking about a person when I was writing these poems, but in the end, like, they're not to that person. They're not just about that person. They're about the experience that I had with that person, but that experience is beyond myself and it's beyond that person as well.
Point of departure. I mean, I love the poems. I think it's, again, I would never be able to write poetry. It takes me places I wouldn't expect to go, right? And that's what it is. It's just about, like, it gives space in a different way, which I really love.
I think the worst thing that anybody could do is read half of this book, because
they just get stressed out.
Because it follows this grieving experience, right? And it gets worse before it gets better. And so, like, we start in this place of numbness and then go into anger and then into depression. But then you come back with reconstruction and working through and hope and acceptance. And so, like, to only read the first half is to, like, get knee deep into the swamp and go, this is disgusting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
But there's beauty in letting yourself feel like the anger, right? It's cathartic. If you're constantly pushing away the anger, or then you never look at it squarely in the face. You don't, and it's not just about one thing. It's about that kind of, right? It's a complex of sorts. I mean, you might be like some aspect or some trigger may be driving the bus, but there's all this other stuff. And so by letting yourself go there, you can move through it, right? Somebody said, I was going to say, I gave it to one friend to read who, he was very positive. Your former poetry teacher. And he loved the way that it was organized. He said, it's this, it's like, it's just the right thing, because then you can experience the journey. It's not just your journey or my journey. It's just like, these are moments. It's not like it's not like a line. And I tell my students all the time, they say the same thing. If you want to make art and you just want to do it in a straight shot kind of way, right? Like, you can do that, but you can also get off the path and crisscross a million different ways and gather all the information. And that's a whole other experience of that terrain, and that experience. And that's, right, that's what a poem is that ability to really explore and to mine. And I think that's true of a painting.
Yeah, I mean, I was almost thinking about reality like this three-dimensional terrain map, and that when we do these paintings and we do these poems, it's like drawing a straight line. It's like, mapping from peak to peak. And if all we can see is these straight lines, then they hint at this complex three-dimensional surface underneath. But, no one arc is going to show you that. And even the collection of them are really just hinting to it. So
no, it gets to loop around. So and I love the fact that you have the different kinds of poems that are in there, that you let yourself be where you are in response, and then we could figure out the match of the paintings and the poems.
They all started as haikus, just to like get it down. I was like, haiku here, haiku there, and they were all like very stiff. And I was like, okay, I could do better.
But that's the first. But that's like, you have an idea, right? And you start off and you go like, okay, well, that got me in the room.
Yeah.
But now
I have to do better.
Now I'm in, right?
If you like the Ask Ezra podcast, then let me know. Comment on your favorite episode. Let us know what you enjoyed or what you'd like to see more of.
Do you have a favorite page?
I actually have a few favorite pages. Should I tell them?
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, let's see.
Do you have a favorite page?
I asked you first.
That's really funny. Well, you're going to be surprised, but one of my favorites is Stuck in the Swamp.
Okay, and can you show this the audience?
Should I read it? So there's the poem.
Yeah, you can. Go ahead. Stuck in the Swamp.
It says, knee deep in mud, the going slow, the mist thick. Small, gnarled trees. I can't see the edge going on in all directions. As I lift one foot, the other sinks. Mud coats my skin like tar. The mud begs to envelop my body, that I might contribute to its mass, its stench. I could stay here forever, in the quiet muck, peaceful in its own way, isolated. I'd never heard anybody talk about depression as eloquently as that, because that's what it's like. You get into the ick of it, and I suppose And I also, I love the Nada, the one that you call Nada. And I love the last one.
In the last,
But
the last poem
was,
really like hit me like a bolt of lightning.
yeah,
Like I don't even feel like that's my poem. That was a gift from
Yeah.
the spirit world. That just, yeah.
yeah. I think it's really kind of fascinating.
So, can you read the last one too? The Smoke in the Maloka?
I will. Smoke in the Maloka. Vine is curling up my arm, here to tell me nothing's wrong. Phyllis, Nada, Grandpa Norm, they don't have a body more. Not below or up above. All that ever lasts is love. No need to feel so alone. They are waiting, all at home. Nothing off or left to do. They just say, I love you too.
Yeah, and I thought, boy, that's a great ending.
It is a great ending.
Yeah,
You
just cap
you
it.
let yourself like be where you are, in the poems. It's almost like it's not pretense, like an actor pretends like to, like they inhabit this character, right? And they say somebody else's words. Like you're channeling those feelings and finding the words, which I think is really
Yeah, like I said, it hit me like a bolt of lightning. I just was like, I have to write it down.
Yeah.
So, let's see, what is my favorite poem? Well, let me say, what is my favorite painting?
Well, I didn't even think to ask that.
Yeah, well, since you commented on the poems, I'd like to say the painting opposite Burning Gaze. So there's like a poem about anger, and the painting is really one of my favorites. It almost looks like lava. It almost looks like,
Oh yeah, I love that painting.
Can you hold that one up? Yeah, that's a really nice one. What's the painting called?
It's called Running Red.
Running Red. Yeah, no, that one.
And it's got a lot of surface. That one's here someplace.
Mm-hmm. And by surface, you mean texture.
I do. It means it has a lot of grit and surface and stuff embedded in it.
So how come you didn't write any poems?
How come I didn't write any poems for this book or
for this book?
I didn't think it was appropriate, actually.
Yeah.
I write poetry like occasionally, and I've been working on some I don't know. I've been working on a couple of projects that will probably never see the light of day.
Not if I have anything to do with it.
What?
Said not if I have anything to do with it. They will see the light of day. If I have anything to do with it, I'll force them into the light.
I keep changing the voice, and it's a long story. And
Sure.
It's, sometimes I think it's would be a good thing to write, and other times I think it's just like,
what am I doing? Yeah, everybody has. Anybody who's ever written a book has at some point said to themselves, boy, this is a really elaborate way to waste time.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So it's about, it centers on, the death of my first husband.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was the book that I wanted, a long time ago after he ended his life when he was in his mid-20s.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's all these stories, like he's at the center, you know what I mean? And the stories like, go out in every direction, but it's not a linear narrative.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I have whatever. Nobody needs to know this.
Yeah. I disagree. I think we all need to know it. And I think we should all just now start harassing Judy saying, when is the book about Tommy coming out? When is it coming out?
I have this sabbatical coming up, and part of me says that I should finish some version of it.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Just have closure, just decide which are the 8 or 10 stories or the whatever.
Yeah.
I've got
And
it.
I was going to say, yeah,
I've got hundreds of pages.
yeah, you probably just need to cut away and get what's left and publish it. Yeah. Well, that's the thing, it can always be unfinished if you want it to be. Like,
Always be unfinished.
yeah, yeah. At a certain point, you gotta put a stake in it. Call it.
Yeah, one way or another, right?
Stick a fork in it. It's done.
Stick a fork in it, ladies and
Um,
gentlemen.
I feel the same way about paintings. Like I've been doing painting,
We have beautiful paintings, and we have many of them hung up.
and I enjoy it, and I think it gives me great pleasure to make them. But I don't. Yeah, I was like, maybe I could stick one in here, but to me it just stuck out like a sore thumb, and I was like,
You have to make choices, and we
Yeah.
make choices.
yeah,
I
it
think
didn't
this
go
is
with the
really-
narrative.
No, and this is a great way. And I sent you one poem that I wrote that I thought might be
Hmm.
suitable, but it wasn't.
Yeah, and
It's
at one point
Yeah.
when we were in a draft, I like stuck a painting of mine in, and it was like all these like really meaningful and deep poems and paintings, and I was like, and here's a watermelon. It didn't feel like it had an appropriate level of depth, right?
Yeah, no, it would need more. It's like you just have to decide you can't do everything in each art work.
Hmm. Yeah,
And that's what this
yeah.
is, artwork, and you have to make some decisions. And it's the parts to the whole kind of thing.
Okay,
And
so
there was
here's a
Okay,
question
what
that I know you've been really kind of hoping I don't ask, but in this book, you really, for the first time publicly, talk about being abused as a child.
Yes,
How
I did.
has that experience been for you to really put it in writing and to know, it's out there?
Well, part of the reason, I guess I vacillated. When the Me Too movement came out, I wanted to start a new movement called Who Hasn't? You know what I mean? It's like, from like my experience, it's not like I haven't shared it with people, but it's not like, I tell everybody I meet, it's different having it in a book.
Mm-hmm.
But here we are talking about, processing trauma, and trauma builds on trauma, right? These formative experiences, you as a small child, you make meaning, and when it helps you cope as a small child, it's really kind of maladaptive learning. And I think that's what happens to people at any age or stage of their development, that, it informs the way that they process their experience, and it often helps at the initial point of time and then is really problematic as you move forward. And that's very true for me. And what I wanted to say is, like, I wanted to be upfront about it, like, saying, like, this is the real things. It's not like I'm going to make a big, right? But for me, that was the genesis. That wasn't everything, right? But that was, in a lot of ways, that was the genesis. And part of the reason it was the genesis is nobody was like really paying attention. So like we were all just kind of, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why weren't adults paying attention? And that wasn't something that just happened once. It happened, I don't know how many times, but I do know it happened a number of times.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted it to be real, right? Like, and honor, other people have their own real things, whatever it was that, created trauma in people's life. It's real. It can be a huge thing. It can be tiny things, right? It can be like, like societal. It can be, right? Like being in the wrong place in the wrong time. It can be, right? It can be anything.
Mhm.
And, like there's no hierarchy, right? Like if
Yeah.
you have trauma, then you have to process it, right? Or you do end up kind of like playing it forward, right? Because your lens predisposes you to kind of, right, not always see things in an accurate way or understand, how to do your own work and take care or be present for other people. Often it's not a healthy skill set to deal, right, to process things or to be grown up, right, or to be able to separate what's yours and what's somebody else's, right, or your idea of helping is not helping, could be really problematic, right? I made mistakes with you when you were growing up because I thought sort of understanding like the dynamics of situations and people's difficulties might help you understand that it wasn't about you, right?
Yeah.
Here and there.
Well, and I think it did. I mean, it did. I think it.
But in ways, I parentified you. Or, I asked you to understand things at different times that were really not your job, and made things complicated.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just a very small example, right? And you're traumatized. You don't always make, like, you don't have, and there were times where, I was so hyper focused on, taking care, right, of you and, like all the people I was supposed to take care of, that sometimes I missed things because I was too busy looking over there.
Yeah. Like the time you fell in the Etruscan tomb.
Well, that's, it's sort of different than
a different story.
It's a different story. That was, I was so used to having everything go wrong.
Yeah.
Everything was going okay. And, I couldn't quite pay, I kept looking, right?
You were like, you were looking out for like, where's the problem? And then
I made the problem.
You made the problem. You manifested it in the form of a 2,000-year-old hole in the ground.
Yep. That I just fit in perfectly. Yep. Like a cork in a bottle.
I'm sorry for taking such pleasure.
Yeah, and then you were pissed at me that I didn't tell you I broke my leg.
No, you lied to me all summer long.
I didn't lie to you.
Oh, okay. You just didn't tell me the truth.
No, errors of omission. Sins of omission.
Yes, crimes.
You're at camp.
What does that make a difference?
I don't know.
That's my list. If you have anything you wanted to ask me about the book or about in general, while people are listening.
No, I think that you've been doing a great job sort of being a project manager, like, managing, like you have a lot of projects you're working on at the same time and you're very invested. It's not really a question. I'm just kind of like in awe. That's all. No. And I'm looking forward to seeing, other things come to fruition at the same time. I can sort of see.
I like this book, and I can't help but get excited about other similar books about, how do you like package artwork in a way that makes it more accessible to folks, right? Because some people are never going to be able to buy a painting, right? Some people are never going to be able to hang a big, 3-foot by 2-foot artwork in their house. But if you could put it on a page, they can own a piece, right? And I think that's really interesting and valuable.
Yep. I think you've got a lot on your plate now to take on all the art people on the planet.
Right. Yeah. No, that is my problem. I get too excited about projects, and then before you know it, I'm spread so thin I can't get anything done.
Don't spread yourself thin. You get more than enough right now, but it's great. that this is like out there. I'm looking forward to, hearing more from different people who get their hands on the book and having this, because this is going to accompany my show. A lot of the paintings that are in here will be in my show in June. And a lot of them are much older. And that was a conscious choice too. To sort of show like a longer, like the journey, right?
Now,
it's not just like
if somebody wants to come to your show, where would that be and when is it going to be?
That's in Boston. It's at the Kingston Gallery for the month of June.
Mm-hmm. Is there going to be? Are we going to? There'll be food. Yeah.
Right.
Well, the opening there'll be food and schmoozing and wine and whatnot.
Sure.
And then and I think we're going to be signing books then.
I hope so.
Yeah. That's the plan. Is that I'll be around and we can sign books.
Perfect.
So if you want to get one of these books,
it's a good excuse.
Yeah, a good excuse to come visit. Yeah, signing books.
That's right.
Well, Judith Brassard Brown, you are my mother, so I talk to you often, but it was really nice to have you on the show.
I really enjoyed being on the show, and I love seeing you in your office and
my element.
Yeah, like you're the functional grown-up now as I sort of toddle off, right? So that's kind of cool.
Well,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure. And it was a pleasure writing this book with you. And I'm interested to see where it goes. Okay.
Love you, Ezra. Thanks for watching the Ask Ezra Intimacy Coaching Podcast. Support our show at patreon.com/askezra. Join us at the personal growth tier and receive a special thank you on the next podcast episode. A very special thank you to both Sarah Nash and Deb Matson for being Patreon supporters at the personal growth tier and helping make the Ask Ezra Intimacy Coaching Podcast possible.